Hey everyone, this video is a guide on my Necromancer summoner build. This build heavily relies on you and your minions working as a team. Your golem and skeletal warriors will be blocking the majority of the enemies, soaking up damage, and spawning corpses. Your skeletal mages will be outputting damage and CCing enemies. Your main role is to curse enemies, heal your minions, proc Ring of Down and Vulnerable, and focus champions down. You will be the weakest link in this build, as your minions can take way more punishment than you, so the majority of the time, you'll be in the back with your skeletal mages, unless you go up against a suppressor elite, in which you can either let your melee minions take care of it slowly, or risk your life and join the front lines to deal with that elite as fast as possible. I've been able to clear tier 47 nightmare dungeons with plenty of deaths. This was more just to test the survivability of my minions, and they seem to do fairly alright. But majority of the time you want to stick with tiers that are 3 to 10 levels above you. So for gear, I'll put the prioritized stats on the side, and I'll go over the aspects that I have for each gear slot. For a helmet, I use Blood Getters, which will increase the maximum number of skeletal warriors by 2. For a chest piece, this is just a placeholder. Once I find a chest piece that I'm satisfied with, I'll put the Protector aspect, which will increase their survivability against elites. For gloves, I use the Splintering aspect, which will help proc Ring of Down. For pants, I use Hardened Bones, which will increase the survivability of your minions. You'll always have more than 7, so that won't be a problem. For boots, I use Coldbringer's aspect, which gives your skeletal mages extra DPS as well as making them apply the chill debuff to enemies, which synergizes with a glyph I'll be covering once we get to the Paragon Board. I use a two-handed sword because it increases critical strike damage and it doubles the power of the reanimation aspect, which increases your skeleton's damage when they're alive for more than 10 seconds. And for the amulet, we use a viscous aspect, which increases the maximum number of skeletal mages by 3. And we also use the Ring of Down, which greatly increases the damage output of minions. This only procs when you damage enemies. Minions themselves can't proc Ring of Down. And for our other ring, I'm using Frenzied Dead. This is just a placeholder as well. I'm looking for the Exposed Flesh aspect, which will generate essence when you damage a vulnerable enemy with a bone skill. In Book of the Dead, for skeletal warriors, I use Reapers and the second node, which will increase corpse generation, and this will synergize with an ability in the skill tree, which I'll cover once I get there. For skeletal mages, I use Cold and the first node, which will help generate essence. And for golems, I use Iron and the first node, just to deal extra damage. I don't go for the second node because I'm already applying vulnerable with the bone spear. For a skill tree, I go for bone splinters and enhanced bone splinters just to unlock core skills. We max out bone spear, which is our primary attack skill. I mainly use it just to focus on champions to get rid of the damage reduction aura that they generate. Enhanced Bone Spear, which will help proc Ring of Down. Supernatural Bone Spear to apply vulnerable to enemies. And we max out Hewed Flesh just to help generate more corpses, which will also synergize with another passive skill further down the skill tree. We get 1 point in Blood Mist to help break out of any CCs. This is especially important in World Tier 4 because you'll get CC'd a lot. We grab Enhanced Blood Mist just to gain access to Ghastly Blood Mist. This is good for generating corpses safely in case you ever die. Next up, we max out Skeletal Warrior Mastery to increase the damage and life of Skeletal Warriors. We max Grim Harvest to generate more essence as we consume corpses, which we will be doing a lot with Raise Skeleton just to keep our minions alive and to increase their damage output. We max out Iron Maiden. This is pretty much just a poor man's Thorns. We grab Enhanced Iron Maiden, which will generate essence, and I go for Horrid Iron Maiden to increase the damage of Iron Maiden. We max out Decrepify, which slows enemies and makes them deal less damage. We grabbed Enhanced Decrepify, which has a chance to stun enemies, and we grab Abhorrent Decrepify, which is very important in decreasing the cooldown of Blood Mist, so you have it ready just in case you get CC'd again. And it can help you spam that active button for golems. We also max out Skeletal Mage Mastery to increase the damage and life of Skeletal Mages. We max out Necrotic Carapace, which will generate Fortify every time a corpse is formed. Skeletal Warriors will be helping with this, as well as the Hewed Flesh passive. We max out Golem Mastery to increase damage and life of the golem. We max out Bonded in Essence, which is very important in keeping your skeletons alive. The healing without this is it's not that great. Next we get Death's Defense, so your minions don't get one-shotted. We get Inspiring Leader, which will increase the attack speed of your minions if you're healthy. Callan's Edict pretty much does the same thing, however keeping Inspiring Leader and Callan's Edict up is very hard because you'll get damaged quite frequently. Next up, we max out Hellbent Commander to increase minion damage. If you're close to them, most of the time you'll be hanging out with your Skeletal Mages just to try to keep Inspiring Leader and Callan's Edict up. I put Amplified Damage last because there's really nothing else I'd rather put as my last skill point on, and this just increases damage to cursed enemies. So for Paragon Board, I go for Prime, which increases damage and maximum life. For our first glyph socket, I put Control, which will increase your damage output to CC'd enemies, and it'll also increase you and your minions' damage to slowed or chilled enemies. You'll do even more damage to stunned or frozen enemies, so this synergizes with Decrepify, Coldbringer's aspect, and your cold skeletal mages. Next up we get Preservation for more armor and Knowledge for more damage. For our second Paragon Board, we get the Cult Leader, which will increase your minion damage and their survivability. So first I go for Armorclad to increase minion armor and minion life. After that I go for Cult Leader, which will increase your minion damage by 45% because we have all three minion types active. After that I go for Puppeteer to increase minion damage and minion attack speed. Then I go for Infused Caster to increase Skeletal Mage damage, and Infused Warrior to increase Skeletal Warrior damage and their armor. After that, I grab the second glyph socket and we put Dead Razor in there to increase the bonuses from Custody and Overlord. If you feel that your minions are dying way too fast, go for Custody. But if you have enough maximum minion life from your gear and they don't really die, then go for Overlord to increase minion damage. So after grabbing these two rare nodes, I grab the magic nodes to reduce damage for minions, and then I grab the magic nodes to increase minion damage. After that, I grab all the magic nodes for Puppeteer, and then all the magic nodes for Armorclad, and then all the magic nodes for Infused Caster, and all the magic nodes for Infused Warrior. And then after that, I go for the third Paragon Board, which is Hulking Monstrosity, which will increase your golem's damage and their survivability. So first off, we go for Bard Strength to increase damage and total armor while the golem is active. After that, we go for Mutation to increase golem damage. And for our third glyph socket, we get Mage to increase skeletal mage damage. And then after that we get Miscreation to increase golem armor. And after this I go straight for Hulking Monstrosity to increase maximum life and damage of the golem. After that we go for Flesh Horror just to increase golem armor, and right now I'm currently going for Infused Golem just to increase golem damage and maximum life. After I grab Frenzied Golem, I plan on either grabbing all these golem magic node just to buff up the golem even more, and for our fourth board selection I plan on going for Scent of Death just to increase my survivability. There's going to be a lot of corpses on the ground, so this won't really be a problem. And here's all my stats.